Good afternoon. We will begin with reciting the prayers for going for refuge and rousing bodhicitta. O sanje chedan soge chonam la chanjo bardo dane chapsum je dage jin soge besanam je drola penjir sanje drobar sho sanje chedan soge chonam la chancho pardo dane chapsum che dage jin soge besanam je drola penjir sanje drobar sho sanje chedang soge chonam la chancho pardo dane chapsum je dage jin soge besanam je drola penjir sanje drobar sho simjen tamje dewatang dewe jutan den brajul che donga dan donga je jutan rawa jul che donga me be dewa tamba tam men rawa jul che nyeren shada nitan rawe Tanyon Shembola Nebra Jorje. Excuse me. The Dharma Expanse Palace of Vakanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Guru. Please bless me and all sentient beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. Now think to yourself that we must bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space, to the state of completely perfect Buddhahood. And in order to do this, we must engage in listening, contemplating, and meditating. And so think to yourself now that you are listening to these teachings with the motivation of bodhicitta. And since that motivation of bodhicitta requires that you first have the motivation of a wish for emancipation from samsara for yourself, please also consider the sufferings of samsara and think how you must free yourselves and how it is the same for all other sentient beings, and therefore they must be freed. And so with this motivation of bodhicitta, the Dharma that we are listening today is the verses on the Treasury of Abhidharma by Vasubandhu, as explained by the Ninth Karmapa Wangchuk Dorje in his commentary Youthful Play. And the verses in the commentary both have 8 chapters, and we are discussing the fourth area, teachings on karma. In the teachings on karma, after the initial introduction on how everything arises from karma, there is the main section on the understanding of karma, and finally a presentation of the synonyms of dharma as a summary. So we are still in the main section, the presentation of the understanding of karma. This has 3 parts: the identification of karma, saying what karma is. There is the general teachings on karma, and then there is the meaning of karma as explained in the Sutras. And the meaning of karma as explained in the Sutras has 2 parts, general teachings and specific explanations. And so we are speaking about the specific explanations, and the specific explanations has 3 topics: the explanation of the 3 obscurations to discard, the explanations of the 3 bases of meritorious action to rely upon, or that is, that we should actually put into effect, and the explanation of the three virtuous precursors. And so of these three, we have finished the first, the explanation of the three obscurations to discard. And we have come to the second, the explanation of the three bases of meritorious action to rely upon, which has, again, three topics explaining the terms in general, and then the nature of each classification, and finally a specific explanation of the generosity of Dharma. And so we finished the first of these the other day, and now we are on the second, the nature of each classification. But before we do that, before we speak about that, we had some interesting questions come in last night. Okay. So the first question is from a listener who has the 5 lay precepts but was raped and is wondering if she still has the 5 lay precepts. So her questions, she has 4 specific questions. What is the situation if one has taken the 5 lay precepts and one is raped? And how will the nuns themselves view the ordeal of rape they're so sadly and greatly suffering if they survive the assault? Will they feel their vows are being broken? I hope not. If a Buddhist layperson or nun is raped and sodomized, can this cause them karmic harm? And any advice for anyone who has been raped in terms of karma? So the first thing to understand is that when you are raped, you are not committing sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct is being committed against you. So you are not the perpetrator, you are not doing a karma, you are on the receiving end of it, so it could well be the ripening of karma, but it is not actually a karmic act on your end generally. Now, it is similar to in the discussion of how when people participate in war, all the people who are participating together have the karma, unless one of them's dragged there kicking and screaming and refuses to participate. And so it's the same for any sort of sexual misconduct. If you resist, if you do not want to, if you do not assent, and you do not experience, and you do not take any feelings of pleasure that you might feel as being your own, then you have not committed sexual misconduct, whether you're talking about the 5 lay precepts or any of the various vows of chastity. So this is basically saying that if you are raped and you do not consent and you do not, and you try to resist, then that is that. And this is then you have not committed sexual misconduct. This comes up in the Vinaya, in the discussion of the vows of chastity, where there were instances of bhikkhus who were raped, and it was determined that they had not broken their vows. So you don't need to worry about that. That also applies, the same thing applies to the nuns, and so that takes care of the second question. Whether they feel their vows are broken or not is an entirely different matter. That one depends upon an individual's way of looking at it, and some might and some might not. So it's a difficult issue. And then can this asking if it can cause them karmic harm, that's the third question here. It's not a karmic action on the point of view of the victim. And so therefore, it will not result in full ripening. It is more likely a result. It could well be, especially if it's like just completely random or seems that way, then it could well be a full ripening of karma, the ripening of some unfortunate action the being who happened to be your previous existence committed. That's not to blame the person who is being victimized. It is to blame the person who was the being who was in their previous in their continuum, which is a different being, a different person, just happens to be in the same continuum. And in terms of anyone who has been raped, advice for anyone in terms of karma, I think the main thing is that if you have experienced any traumatic event, Not just, it doesn't matter what sort of harm has been inflicted upon you, and so it's not special to being to rape. It's a question of any harm that has been inflicted on you. If you take that and you hold a grudge, and then you use that as the basis to try to get revenge and harbor hate in your heart and act out of it, then of course those subsequent actions are going to have a karmic effect. Of course, it's understandable to have that sort of reaction in a situation when you've been harmed terribly, and no one's going to condemn anyone who's feeling that, because that's just like the way it goes. This is the way something bad happens to you, and ordinary individuals naturally then want to do something in response. So that's not a condemnation, but looking on it as a Dharma practitioner, if we want to avoid anything such as that happening to ourselves or anyone else in the future, then we need to avoid responding out of anger, but instead to develop our qualities of loving kindness and compassion, so that eventually we can include even those people who have harmed us. In other words, we need to practice patience. And another way we can do it is similar to a teaching in the mind trainings, where you talk about 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 roots of virtue, where when you experience something like this, you can make an aspiration, because I have experienced this, may no one else, may all of the karma of other sentient beings who that would ripen in this same way as this type of harm, therefore then ripen upon me. Okay, so that was the first set of questions, and then there were some other questions. So the other day I spoke about how we, in the Mahamudra tradition, we try to avoid the formless realm meditation, and how we need to be careful of this in our Mahamudra practice when you're doing Mahamudra. So the question is asking, well, what about the dhyanas, the meditation that lead to rebirth in the form realm? What about the dhyanas? And in terms of Mahamudra practice, then we don't practice them either, but for a different reason. And the reason is that when you practice the dhyanas, the way you achieve the dhyanas is you meditate the appearances of when you're in the desire realm. You start out, you want to achieve the first level of form, you meditate the appearances of the desire realm are coarse. They are not, they are suffering, they are not good. I want to be freed of these and be reborn and experience those of the form realm that are pure. So then you meditate on discarding the appearances of the desire realm and achieving the first level of form. And then you realize, the appearances of the first level of form are coarse. Those of the second level of form are subtle. I want to achieve those. You meditate on that and you achieve the second level of form, and so forth, up to the 4th dhyana. So these are meditations that, in terms of the sutra practice, is described it's also mentioned in the way of the Bodhisattva, where the first jhana in particular is called like a fertile field of investigation, because they do have very strong powers of analysis, especially the first jhana. And they are powerful types of meditation. However, when we're talking about Mahamudra meditation, in general, the point of modern Mahamudra meditation is not to try to meditate. It's not to try to change your experience. It's not to try to do anything. It's just to try to look and see what's actually happening. And so instead of thinking the appearances of the desire realm are the appearances of the desire realm are coarse, instead you look at the nature and think, what is the nature of the experiencer? And so you don't care what happens. You're experiencing coarse experience, subtle experience, it doesn't matter. That's not the point. And so therefore, the jhana meditations are different. They're more like what we'd consider in Mahamudra, like kind of a constructed conceptual meditation. They're generally classified as a type of shamatha meditation. And so that is generally how we look at the levels of jhana. And then the final question is that when we were speaking about the afflicted obscurations the other day, we talked about the 3 types of obscurations: karmic, afflicted, and the obscurations of fuller ripening. And I made a little distinction between the afflicted obscurations here and the afflictive obscurations in the Mahayana. Now, I have to be honest here that in the Tibetan, that the word is exactly the same. But that same word can be translated in different ways. And so I chose to translate it as afflicted obscurations here to show that there's a difference between these and the afflictive obscurations that we talk about in the Mahayana. In the Mahayana, we talk about all afflictions as being afflictive obscurations. All afflictions and many of their imprints. In here, when we're talking about the afflicted obscurations, we're talking about continuous afflictions that just never cease, whether great, medium, or subtle. Anyways, we're talking about the continuous afflictions. Basically, when you've got someone who's just always got an affliction, often it would be like a view, like personality view, but it might also be a desire, someone who's just continually angry. That would be an afflicted obscuration. So that's the difference. The one is a specific type of affliction that prevents one from practicing. The other refers to, just in general, what we need to abandon, which are all the afflictions and their imprints. Okay, so that covers that. And now we can get back to the text. And today, instead of talking about bad karma, we get to talk about good karma. Isn't it nice? You finally get to the end of the chapter, and after talking about all these horrible things, killing and stealing and all of this stuff, and you talk about karmic obscurations and killing parents, and here I am talking for weeks about wringing the necks of chickens, and finally we get to talk about something uplifting. Trungpa Rinpoche often tells the story about how he was, I think he was on an airplane and he was sitting next to someone who said, "You Buddhists, I'm not sure, Buddhists, how can Buddhists really work as a religion? Religions are supposed to talk about things that are uplifting, that make you feel good and are transcendent and so forth. And what do you Buddhists talk about? You talk about suffering, emptiness, all and impermanence and all that. So how can that help anyone?" The point is you have to know what you don't want in order to know how you can get to the transcendent. So now we get to the three types of merit. So we talked about them a little bit. The explanation of the merit, three bases of merit, meritorious action that need to be practiced. And so for the nature of each classification, there are two parts, explaining the merit born of generosity, and then explaining the other two merits. So generosity is actually kind of the first one and the main, the one that we practice in the beginning, and that's why it's given more space. And it's like something that's that we really can do. And when we're talking about the other two merits, they're a little bit maybe they're talked about a little bit in other areas as well. So maybe they didn't need as much here. But at any rate, we're focusing on generosity now. So explaining the merit born of generosity, this has three topics: the essence of generosity, classifications, and distinctions. So the essence of generosity is basically saying, what is generosity? Excuse me. The essence of generosity has 2 points. There's the actual and that's a result. And so the actual says, what makes one give is generosity, wishing to offer or to help. It's body and speech karma and intention. So what makes one give? It's like that giving. And when we're doing that, it can come from many different reasons. It can come out of fear. It can come out of wanting to gain friends and influence people. It can come out of a want for desire or so forth. It can also come out of a feeling of wanting to benefit someone else. So here it is specified in the second line, wishing to offer or to help. So that's mean that when it's something that's making you give and it's coming out of the wish to benefit, to offer, or to help. And so like offerings to the gurus and to the Buddhas and so forth, to help sentient beings who need help. It's body and speech karma, that is the perceptible karma of body and speech, as well as the intention that motivates it. So that which makes one give itself is called generosity. Now, in Sanskrit, the word for generosity is dana. And dana can also refer not just to the giving, it can also refer to the thing that is given. And so for that reason, the next sentence says, clothes and so forth that are given are called by that name. So in Sanskrit, you'd call them dana. In English, we'd call them gifts. We wouldn't call them generosity. Would we? No, we wouldn't really call them generosity. But they are not actually generosity because they are neutral. In other words, generosity is a virtuous state of mind, and a piece of clothing, food, no matter how delicious or how warm the clothing or anything, it is neutral. It is not virtuous. It is not unvirtuous. It is just a thing. It's just, something that you can use. So it's actually neutral. Likewise, giving without the motivation of virtuous volition, such as when you give out of fear, a wish for a response. You want to give because you want something else to give you something in return. The quid pro quo. Desire, or so forth. You want something from someone else, so you give it out of desire, or so forth. That is not virtuous. So it is not giving that is generosity. So that generosity, that type of giving, we would not label by the name generosity. Thus, generosity is giving with a wish to offer or to help, which are distinguished in terms of the recipient. So what this means is, so when we say it's distinguished in terms of the recipient, we talk about different types of generosity, and generally we can divide it into two types. We can talk about offerings, and we can talk about gifts. And this is kind of taking the Sanskrit and Tibetan terms, but offerings are like when you are making offerings to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, your spiritual teachers, and so forth. So it's making offerings up. So in Tibetan we would say making offerings up to the jewels. And then giving is like when you're helping people who need help, or other beings who need help. So if you're giving food to animals, if you are doing life release, if you are protecting people from danger and so forth, that is help. If you're offering medical service and so forth, if you're doing it for free. If you're doing it for pay, it's not generosity, it's a job. But if you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, of course there's a lot of generosity involved even when you're doing it. I know that doctors and nurses often go above and beyond the call, and all medical workers actually often go over and above the call of duty, especially in times such as these. But when you're talking about generosity, it's like giving. Otherwise, you're expecting something in the end. So we talk about offerings to those above, up to those above, and gifts to those, giving to those who, down to those below, to the downtrodden. It is body and speech virtuous karma. So it's actually an action of body and speech. So how do you give? Well, you can either materially give something, or you can financially give something, which these days only involves a few little motions of the fingers or a little deftness with your thumb on a phone. But that still is a physical action, isn't it? Later, when they manage to get it all wired up so that it's not, then we'll have to look at it then. But then we could say it's a physical action because you're manipulating brain waves. I don't know. At any rate, it's generally considered body and speech. Virtuous karma, and the motivating intention that is concurrent with non-greed along with its associations. So the intention means basically, that which gets you to do it. That's what makes you do it, and that is your wish to help, your wish to benefit, and that also has the aspect of non-greed, which means like you instead of keeping something, you want to give it away. That's non-greed. That's the opposite of greed, as well as everything else that goes along with that. So that would include the various mental factors that are concurrent with that. And particularly, we'd often think of the virtuous ones, faith and non-hatred and all those other virtuous mental factors, but it also would include the volition and the contact, et cetera, all of the virtuous mental factors, as well as anything else, basically the 5 aggregates. So you could look at it as the 5 aggregates that are motivating you to do this. But in particular, we're thinking about the mental ones. From the commentary it says, that is the auto commentary, when beings make gifts of their own possessions with virtuous minds, at that time the virtuous aggregates are said to be called generosity. So you want to help, and you're making a gift of something that's yours that you can actually give. If you're giving someone else's things, it's not certain that it's generosity. It might actually be kind of the opposite. It might kind of be taking that which is not given. Even if you're only taking possession of it to give it to someone else, it's still given, taking that which is not given. Sorry to Robin Hood on that one. So possession. So when you're making that gift with a virtuous mind, at that time, the virtuous aggregates are said to be called generosity. So when you are actually making that gift, let's say you have made a delicious meal and you're bringing it down to serve at a soup kitchen to people who have lost their jobs in the current epidemic. So you're going to do this, and you have made this, and you're feeding them. So your action of giving people the food is the action of body. Your speaking to them is action of speech, right? So that's body and speech action. That's all the aggregate of form. Then in your mind, there's that volition of I want to give. There's the contact. There's the progeny of knowing that this is something good to do. And there is also the clarity of mind that is faith. And there is the non-greed and so forth. So all of that. And then, of course, and there's the feeling of pleasure or whatever you're feeling, and then probably pleasure if you've got a virtuous mind. Either pleasure or neutral. I doubt it would be unpleasant. Maybe it might be you burn your finger doing it, in which case it would be an unpleasant feeling. But, still you're happy to do it. And then there's the consciousness itself. So you've got all 5 aggregates going at the same time. You've got the body and speech, the actions are form. You've got the feeling is the sensations, basically. The conception, the 3rd aggregate, is is distinguishing that this is food that you're giving, and they might be thinking good food, excellent food, wonderful food, good person who needs it, and that's conception. Then you might then all the other mental factors are in formations, and then the mere awareness of that is the 5th aggregate of consciousness. So it's resulting in abundance. So the result of that action is that by its nature, it's going to produce abundance in the future as a full ripening. So that's one of the main reasons why we need it, because in the future we need to have abundance if we're going to be able to practice. We are experiencing abundance to a much greater degree than we actually realize now in this human lifetime. If you compare our situations, even if we are, and I know a lot of practitioners out there are kind of on the edge financially, especially among the people who have been practicing. I know quite a few who are kind of on the edge financially, but actually, in comparison to what we could be, in comparison to like a chipmunk, you are doing great in terms of materially. Right? Chipmunks, they're running around looking for a few nuts. Okay, the basis of meritorious action born from generosity results in great abundance. It is abundance's nature that it should arise from this source. It's just the nature. When you give, it comes out of or when you give, it will in the future lead to abundance. And if all the abundance that we experience now comes out of generosity that we have practiced in the past. So here's kind of a little interesting, maybe it's not a very interesting, but it's one of those things that as like a translator and as a pedant, I find very interesting is this actual sentence here is describing the Sanskrit grammar here for the term that I translated as for meritorious action born from. What does that born from mean? When you say that it's born from it, and what you're saying is that that's the nature of the abundance, is that it comes out of it, and that's why it says born from. The Sanskrit is a prefix name called Maya. So this is Dhamma is the type of merit. And so it's basically saying, you could be translated as consisting of generosity, but the meaning, as it is explained in the auto commentary, is that it comes out of it. So this is something that when you look at it in Tibetan, you wonder what they're talking about. Then you look at the Sanskrit, it actually makes sense. Okay. So the classification. So when you talk about classifications, like saying, what are the types of generosity? So here, generosity is being classified in terms of who is it going to benefit. So here the verse says, generosity brings benefit to self or other, both or neither. So you've got 4 types of generosity. You've got generosity that brings benefit to oneself, generosity that brings benefit to the other, generosity that brings benefit to both oneself and to others, and generosity that benefits neither oneself nor the others. Okay, so what are these 4 types of generosity? When nobles who are not detached, or ordinary individuals who are detached, give to a stupa, that is generosity that brings benefit to oneself only. Okay, now what is the reason for that? It's because it does not benefit another. They're making an offering to the stupa. The stupa is just sitting there. The stupa, you put beautiful flowers out in front of a stupa, and a stupa does not have eyes that it can look and see the beautiful flowers. There was a beautiful display of flowers. I saw some pictures put out in front of the stupa in Bodhinath the other day on the solstice. So like that offering, the stupa has eyes painted on it, but those are not actual eyes, and so the stupa did not receive any benefit from that offering. But it did benefit the people who made the offering. So who would it benefit? It would benefit nobles who are not detached. Detached here is shorthand for people who have not achieved detachment from the desire realm. That's shorthand. It appears many times in this text. We just haven't come across it yet. So detached means someone who is still attached to the desire realm. Someone who is detached is someone who is no longer attached to the desire realm. So detached and attached. So nobles who are not detached, that would mean those people who are stream enterers or once returners. Why is it going to benefit them? Because in their next lifetime they will reap the result. Or possibly in this lifetime, if they're like making an offering to the Bodha stupa, maybe that'll be enough to be have a visible result. But it's not going to be, generally, it's not something that brings them any benefit otherwise. And then here it says in Wangchuk Dorje, it says, ordinary individuals who are detached. And this is an interesting point. I had to think about it for a while, because when you look at the auto commentary, it says, or ordinary individuals who are not detached. Or no, wait a minute. Yeah, so it's so for ordinary individuals, here in Wangchuk Dorje it is are detached, and in the auto commentary it says not detached. And so I started looking at that and thinking about it to see, is there a contradiction here? And there is not. The reason that there is no contradiction is that if you have an ordinary being such as ourself, say for example that we go to the stupa in Bodhinath and we make an offering of flowers just as beautiful as was put out the other day. Since we are ordinary individuals, we are going to be reborn again in the future, and in that future lifetime, then we will experience the result of abundance that comes from making that beautiful offering of flowers, right? Now let's take the other case. Let's say that we have achieved the first dhyana. We are not practicing Maha Mudra. We have achieved the first level of dhyana, and then we go to the Bodhanath stupa and we make a beautiful offering of flowers, or any other stupa really. Doesn't matter which. You make that offering of flowers to the stupa, or to the statue of the Buddha, and then in your next lifetime, you're born in the form realm. So you might experience it in that lifetime in the form realm, or you might experience it, no, you wouldn't, because it's merit of the, so you wouldn't experience it in the form realm. You would experience it after you are finished with the form realm in your next lifetime and you're reborn back again in the desire realm, right? You wouldn't experience it in the form realm because it's not a karma on the level of forms. It has to ripen in desire. So therefore, you would take your lifetime in the form realm, hang out there for a few eons, and come back to the desire realm, and then experience great wealth when you were born as a dog. You'll be owned by an American pet owner. Or Canadian maybe too, I don't know. Okay. So that benefits oneself. Or when nobles who are detached, that is, who are no longer attached to the desire realm, give to another sentient being, with the exception of visibly experienced results, it is generosity that is only for the benefit of the other, because it benefits the others, but not the noble. So let's say, here it is. You achieve the level of non-returner. You are never going to be reborn in the desire realm again. And yet you still have compassion. Even non-returners, even arhats have compassion, no matter what we say about it in the Mahayana. Arhats have plenty of compassion. And so they act out of compassion and they make gifts. So that arhat makes a gift to someone, to a sentient being, out of their compassion. Now that arhat is not going to experience that gift again because they're not going to be reborn in the desire realm. They're not going to be reborn at all. Even if it's a non-returner making a gift in the desire realm, they make the gift in the desire realm, and then they're never coming back to the desire realm in any other lifetime. They're done. So that gift is not going to benefit them unless it is a gift that has a visibly experienced result. If it's visibly experienced result, so they make a great offering to the Sangha with pure motivation, it benefits all the ordinary individuals in the Sangha, and as a result of sponsoring a meal for the 10,000 members of the Sangha, then they experience some sort of ripening of that in this lifetime. But that's, kind of the exception. Generally, it's not, for the nobles who are detached, it's not going to benefit them. That's benefiting the other only. When nobles who are, and the reason for that is because they have transcended the level. It is not for the noble's own benefit because they have transcended the level where it fully ripens. So they made the gift in desire, that's where it could fully ripen, but they won't be there for it to ripen. When nobles who are not detached, or ordinary individuals who are detached, give to another sentient being, that is generosity for the benefit of both self and others. So when you're talking about like a stream enterer or a once returner who are going to come back to the desire realm, and they make a gift or an offering to another sentient being, that is generosity for the benefit of both self and other, because it benefits the other, the one who's being given that, given that gift is benefited, and it benefits them because they're going to experience the full ripening of that in another lifetime. So here it says ordinary individuals who are detached. So that means if someone has achieved the levels of dhyana or the levels of formless, someone has achieved the level of the peak of existence, and so but they still make an act of generosity in this lifetime, and that means that they will then go off and be born and spend 80,000 great eons doing nothing, and then they'll come back and they'll be reborn as a dog and be born to either a North American dog owner who treats them nicely, not a Tibetan or a Nepali dog owner. Maybe the Tibetan or Nepali dog owners who are in the United States who have come over here and been taught. And I think a few of them over there are also learning how to spoil their pets, but that's beyond the point. Then the last one is benefit to neither. When nobles who are detached give to a stupa, it is generosity for neither's benefit. It is no more than offering to pay respect and to repay kindness. So, your friendly Arhat feels faith and makes an offering to the stupa in Bodhanath or whichever other stupa. The stupa isn't going to use it, as we have already discussed. The Arhat's not going to get any benefit out of it. No one's getting any good. So why would they do it? It's like a show of respect. It might be to inspire faith in other sentient beings, which even Arhats try to do. They aren't without compassion, as I have said. It is, or it could be to repay respect, to repay kindness. For example, if you feel like the 3 jewels have been very kind to you, then you make an offering to the 3 jewels as a way of repaying that kindness. Because that's the distinctions, the different classifications of it in terms of who's going to be helped by it. And then there are the other distinctions, and these are primarily distinctions of the act. It's like there are 2 topics, the overview and the explanation. So the overview says, distinctions of the donor and of things in field distinguish it. Distinctions of the donor, so that's the first thing that there can be distinctions in. The second is distinctions of the things that are given. So what are you given? Are you giving something nice or are you giving something shoddy? And then the third is the distinctions of the field of recipient. That is, who are you giving it to? And these 3 different things distinguish it or create different types of generosity. And so the explanation has 5 topics: the distinctions of donor, distinctions of what is given, distinctions of field, and identifying superior generosity, and then the last is elaborations. So here, field, just to remind you, the field refers to the recipients. It's like when you plant, a field is because it's like the metaphor, you plant merit in the field, and if the field is fertile, it grows well. It grows nice big fruits, like big strawberries. Distinctions of the donor, this has 3 points. The actual donors excel through faith, etc. So what makes the donor? What's the distinction of donor? It's like, do you feel faith when you're giving it, or are you just kind of like going sleepwalking through the action? And do you feel? I mean, how do you feel when you're doing it? What is your actually? That makes the big main difference in the donor. Donors are excellent when they give with faith, etc. It says in the commentaries. The etc. includes many other qualities such as discipline. So do you have what sort of vows and discipline do you have? Learning, so that would be, how much Dharma you've studied, how much you've learned, and so forth. And the phrase, included in the phrase and so forth, is giving with charity, with full knowing or prajna, having few desires, and so forth. Basically, so the stronger the different qualities of the virtuous actions. Now, we're talking here about generosity as a virtuous action to begin with. So we're not talking about when you're just giving sometimes people even give things out of spite. You're not doing that. We're talking about actual generosity. We're doing it with the virtuous. But there are degrees of generosity, there are degrees of virtue in the mind, and so that's what makes the distinction in the giver. And then the second is in terms of the manner of giving. How do you actually give them? and make gifts with respect and such. When one makes gifts with a preparation of respect for the recipient and such as giving with one's own hand, at a good time, and without harming anyone else, the generosity becomes superior. So it's like, are you just going to slap the food on the plate and give it away? Or are you going to, plate it nicely and give it out to the other person with a respectful way? That's like respectful. That's the first one, the respect. The second is, are you doing it yourself, or is it you just can't be bothered? Have your minions take care of it for you. Right? Like all the sutras, when they talk about the Buddha going and having a meal from some rich householder. Now, you know that the rich householder in these sutras had a pile of cooks who were making the food generally. But then the rich sponsor comes and actually serves the Buddha with his own hand, serves the Sangha with his own hand. Even kings, so like the story I said the other day, serving with their own hand. It's more respectful. When you're doing it yourself, as you're saying, hey, give him food. That's that. At a good time. At a good time actually also can mean, probably better to translate, it's not as good time, but in a timely way. When people need it, when it's ready. Instead of saying, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow. It's like, actually, like someone has a need, you give the person make the gift when they're there. When they can actually receive the gift. Because you have no idea. If you think, this beggar is here every day, I can give tomorrow. You don't know. You just can't be certain. And you're always thinking tomorrow. Well, tomorrow is not, there's no guarantee of tomorrow for you or anyone else. When I first went to India in 2000, I don't remember if it was the winter of 2002 or maybe it was the next year, probably the next winter. There are a number of beggars who were always around the Maha Stupa in Sarnath and Mahabodhi temple in Sarnath. And I would see them every day, and some days I'd give them something, and some days I wouldn't. And then there was one that sometimes I'd go down and I just had forgotten to bring any money. And I did that for a few days in a row, and then I put some money in my pocket, and I thought, okay, today I'm definitely going to... There's in particular one woman who I wanted to make a gift to. And I went down with my gift with the intention, I'm going to give it to her, and she wasn't there. No gift. So how can you gather the accumulation of merit when there's no one to give to? So when there is someone to give to, then you make that gift. You do it as soon as, quickly. When you're able, the less thinking. When you're driving by that intersection and you see people standing there with the signs saying, please help for food. Or whatever. I don't remember I haven't spent enough time in North America, and when I'm in North America, I don't go out anywhere where I see people holding these signs, which is probably a bad thing, because I'm not practicing generosity either, am I? But when you go by and you see these people with their signs who say, need help, you got to give them then. Because if you don't give them then, when are you going to be able to give? You don't know if you're going to be run over, if your car is going to be smashed by a truck at the next intersection. So if you don't take the opportunities to give now while you have them, you have no guarantee. So it's important to try to never let an opportunity to gather merit by. Just don't let it slip by. Just if you have the chance to give, then you should give. You may not be able to give a whole lot, but you give what you can. And if you give what you can with a good motivation, then that's far better even than giving a lot with a bad motivation. So you give what you can when the opportunity presents itself. And so that's giving things in a timely manner. And the fourth is without harming anyone else. So If you have to kill a goat in order to, make your feast, then that's bad. I mean, that means that you have to engage in killing to do your generosity. So that's not harm. It's better not to harm any sentient being. If it has all four of these, then the characteristics, then the generosity becomes superior. And the result of this, it brings them honor and abundance in time and with no obstacles. So from these four causes of generosity, there are four distinctions respectively. So the first, that is preparation of the respect, means that in return, in the future, you'll be honored. Now the second is that you're giving with your own hand. The second will bring vast abundance. You're doing it yourself, so that brings greater abundance. Of course, abundance in general is the result of generosity, but doing it yourself makes it even more so. The third, which is giving at a good time or in a timely manner, brings the abundance in a timely manner, so that the abundance will appear at a time when you can actually use it. Not at a time when you can't. And from the fourth, it's like, I wish I had this a week ago. We often have that feeling. So if you had been giving things, if you give to those beggars who are out there on the street corners or holding signs at the intersections, if you do it in a timely manner, then you will not have to worry in the future. I should have got that a week ago. I wish I had that a week ago. And the fourth, which is without harming, one will receive the abundance with no obstacles. Then there will be no delay or obstacles to the result. So then there are distinctions of what is given, and this has 2 points. From excellently colored things and so forth. From excellently colored things and so forth, including things with excellent fragrance, excellent taste or flavor, and excellent touch, the gifts are superior. In other words, this is saying that if you are giving the nicest thing you can, then, or something that, maybe not the nicest thing you can, but something that's nice, something that's good. If you're giving, if you're making a gift and you just give kind of a small, maybe not the nicest sort of thing, of course it's good. It's excellent to do that. But if you give the nicest thing you're able to give, then that is going to be more powerful. And when we look at the examples of the great teachers of our time, when the offerings that they make, like the ones that spring to mind are Khenpo Rinpoche and the Gala Karmapa. And of course others are. Khenpo Rinpoche always made sure that all his offerings and everything that he was making were always just perfect, and he made sure that they were good. And when you go to the Kaju Munam and you look at the offerings that the Gala Karmapa puts out, has arranged, and when the Karmapa is at the Munam, he spends a lot of time checking those offerings and making sure that everything is just right and just perfect. When he made the long life offerings to Trangpa Rinpoche back in, 2007 or 2008, and then to Sutta Rinpoche and Gyaltsab Rinpoche, he just made sure that everything was perfect. And so that attention to detail and making sure that everything is really nice, that increases the merit. And the result of these, there is, here in the next line, there comes beauty, fame, affection, and most youthful flesh, pleasing to touch in all the seasons. From these ways of being generous, respectively, there comes beauty. That comes from giving things that are well-shaped and have good color. If you give something that smells nice, you will have fame that spreads in all directions like fragrance. If you give things that taste nice, then you will receive affection like a delicious taste. And if you give things that have a nice, that feel good, then your body will have the most youthful flesh that, like a precious queen, is pleasing to touch in all the seasons of the year. During the cold seasons, it'll be warm. And during the hot season, it'll be cool. And during normal seasons, it'll be natural. So it'll just be the perfect temperature all the time. So the next one is the distinctions of fields. So here the fields are listed. The fields of wanderers' suffering, benefit, and qualities are highest. So these are there are 4 superior fields. Of these, the one that is superior in terms of wanderers is, as it said, if you give to those born in the place of animals, hope for 100 times the full ripening. If you give to humans with faulty shila, that is faulty discipline, hope for 1,000 times the full ripening. So this is the just really giving to regular sentient beings, beings who need it, whether they're animals or humans with faulty discipline. That would mean like people who are having trouble keeping their vows or who have broken their vows. That's 1,000 times the ripening. Then the next field is the field of suffering. The superior field of suffering is such as among the 7 material merits, giving nursing or giving during cold seasons. So we spoke about at the beginning of our teachings on karma a few weeks ago, we talk about the 7 material merits of giving a monastery or a temple a bed or sustenance continuously, a bed to a fasting guest, or nursing for the sick, or generosity in times of darkness. So among these, then the nursing for the sick, or generosity in the times of darkness, such as giving during cold seasons, during the winter when people need more food and they need better lodging and so forth. These are the field of suffering. So basically, the field of suffering is beings who are actually experiencing suffering. People who are deprived, who are sick. Not just people, beings who are deprived and sick and so forth. Then the field of qualities is when it is through qualities that the field is highest or superior, it is said. Except the field of benefit. The superior field of benefit is giving to parents and other benefactors, so parents and spiritual teachers who are ordinary individuals and so forth. Those are the superior field of benefit. And then the last is through the qualities, that the field is highest or superior. It is as is said. If one gives to those who have discipline, one can hope for 100,000 times the result. So this would include to people who like bhikkhus who keep their vows well, bhikkhunis who keep their vows well, to arhats and other noble individuals, to Buddhas and so forth. That is giving to the field of qualities. So then we have identifying superior generosity. So superior generosity, there's the supreme generosity, and then there's immeasurable generosity. So what is the difference between these two? The supreme generosity has 2 points. There are 2 types. The highest is from freed to freed, or by the Bodhisattva. So from freed to freed, so that means like when you have a non-returner or an arhat makes a gift to another non-returner or another on arhat, neither of them has any attachment to the gift or the giving. They don't really particularly care that they've got it. Of course, they appreciate it, and it's not like they're going to say, "Oh, you just gave me something, I don't want that. I'm an arhat, why are you giving that to me?" They're not going to say that. But they will say, that they don't need it, because they don't have any desire for it. And they aren't going to get anything, and the giver is not going to receive any benefit because they're freed. They're giving it out of respect. For example, if you have someone achieves the level of arhatship and they give to their teacher who is an arhat out of a wish to repay kindness and show respect. The highest of all the different types of generosity is from one who is freed and has no desire to one who is freed and has no desire. To another one, that is, I should say. It's not like when you're giving to yourself. That wouldn't be generosity, really. Or generosity given by the Bodhisattva in order to benefit all sentient beings. The Bodhisattva is not freed. As I have mentioned a couple times in the Great Exposition School, the Bodhisattva is an ordinary individual until the point when he's sitting down underneath the Bodhi tree on that last night when he realizes the path of seeing, finally, after 3 uncountable eons plus even that extra 91 or 100. Right? So that's so during that entire time, up until that point, when he's sitting under the Bodhi tree, at that point, when the Bodhisattva is giving, the Bodhisattva is doing that out of a wish to benefit. This is because by giving by one who is not freed to those who are not freed, This is giving by one who is not freed to those who are not freed, but it is also supreme because it is a generosity given in order to benefit all sentient beings because of the bodhicitta, the strong motivation of the bodhisattva. And then there is another way, and this is identifying the supreme of the 8 types of generosity. 8th. That's all it says in the root. 8th. This is one of those things where a lot of people, you might be tempted to try to make this actually an understandable topic and say something like, the 8th type of generosity, but actually the original just says 8th. Likewise, from a sutra, generosity is 8-fold. Giving to the near, giving out of fear, so that's 1 is giving to the near, 2 is giving out of fear. Giving to the near means giving to those who are close to you. The 3rd is giving because someone has given to you. That means your friend gave you a gift the other day, so you're giving them another one in return. Giving so that someone will give to you. That's the 4th. Giving because your parents gave before. It's your family tradition that you always do this. It's not just your parents and your grandparents and your ancestors always did this type of generosity. And so you're going to do that same type of generosity. Giving for the purpose of the higher realms. Now, of course, as practitioners, when we begin at, if you give for the purpose of the higher realms, that is the correct worldly view. It's a good thing to do. You want to be reborn as a human. You do not want to be reborn as an animal or a hungry ghost or in hell. So you need to practice generosity. And one of the reasons is to be reborn in the higher realms. So that is a good type of generosity. It's just not the supreme. Giving out of a desire for fame, that's pretty self-explanatory. I think you can probably all understand why that is not supreme. And giving in order to attain the mind's ornament, the mind's necessities, the collection of yogas, and the supreme purpose. So here, the mind's ornament are the miraculous powers. The mind's necessities are the noble eightfold path. The collection of yogas refers to the meditation of shamatha and insight. And the supreme purpose means in order to achieve arhatship or Buddhahood. So it's basically saying in order to achieve qualities and to become a good practitioner yourself. So just to go through those again, the mind's ornament is the miraculous powers, mind's necessities are the Noble Eightfold Path, the collection of yogas is shamatha and insight, and the supreme purpose is achieving arhatship, enlightenment, and so forth. So of these, the eighth, giving for the purpose of attaining the mind's ornament and so forth, is supreme. I think that is self-explanatory. Then the last question is the immeasurable generosity. And here we're talking about being immeasurable in terms of the results. It is said in the sutras that giving to stream enterers and other noble beings and other nobles brings great and immeasurable merit. So, in particular, it says in the sutras that when you make a gift to someone who has just gone through the path of seeing, and it's really fresh at that point, that there's really great merit at that point. In addition, although they are not nobles but ordinary individuals, gifts to your parents, the ill, Dharma teachers, or the Bodhisattva in his last birth brings yield surpassing any measure in terms of results. They bring results that you can't measure. So with the Bodhisattva, this is easy to understand. With your parents, as we spoke about the other day, they have given you the greatest gift, a human body that you can practice, with which you can practice. The ill, they really need your help. People who are sick need nursing. They need care. We need to take care of them. So being generous to them is exceptionally wonderful. Well, then what about the last one, the Dharma teachers? Well, then, the others are in the field of benefit, suffering, and qualities. But what are Dharma teachers included in? And so here by Dharma teachers, we aren't talking about Buddhas appearing in human form like the Gyalwang Karmapa and Trungpa Rinpoche and various other masters like that. We're talking about ordinary individuals such as me who have absolutely no qualities and are, we're trying to do what we can. So, but we're ordinary individuals. So, we aren't in the field of suffering or benefit or qualities, are we? Or it's not so clearly. So, which one are we in? Why am I saying we? Maybe because I'm sitting here blabbing away. I don't know. I'm really not angling for gifts. They give all beings who are blinded by ignorance the eye of full knowing, the eye of prajna. In other words, the Dharma teachers teach you how to think so that you can know what is Dharma and what is not. You develop your prajna through that. They teach what is Dharma and what is not, and they accomplish the undefiled Dharma body. So in other words, they themselves are practicing in order to achieve the Dharmakaya. Here, not so much in the Mahayana sense of Dharmakaya, but in order to achieve all the qualities. And in brief, accomplish the activity of the Buddhas, so they are spiritual friends. For that reason, they're in the field of benefit. So your Dharma teachers, and this is talking about ordinary individuals who are Dharma teachers, would be included in that field of benefit. So I think that is enough for for today. And so at this point, just a brief reminder, because it's kind of topical right now. We've been speaking about generosity, so I'd like to remind you that on Friday, we'll be doing the offerings to the gurus, which is a great way. Here at the monastery, we're going to be making actual offerings to the Gala and Karmapa. Of course, he won't be here in person, but he will certainly know what is going on. And we'll be making offerings to him as nice offerings as we can, and you all can participate. So if you all participate in this over the web, because when we all do an action together, we all get the karma. We'll be making offerings that'll please the guru, and because the Gala and Karmapa is probably in that field of qualities, it's not like a Dharma teacher that we're speaking. He's not like a Dharma teacher speaking about here, but one of the greatest offerings we can make, especially as described in the Mahayana and in the Vajrayana, is an offering that pleases the gurus. And so the best way we can please the Karmapa is by making him offerings both in terms of the actual offerings we're making and also in terms of our faith, devotion, and practice. So please join us on Friday for that. So with that, let us now dedicate the merit of speaking, of teaching and listening, so that all sentient beings may achieve the completely perfect state of Buddhahood swiftly, and until such time as they do, may they never be afflicted by strife, conflict, war, famine, or any other pestilence, or any other suffering, and may they quickly learn how to practice generosity swiftly in great manners, so that they may all experience abundance from now until they achieve enlightenment. O sanam de tam je se bani Tobne nye bedranam pamchene Gegana chibarla trumbai Simpetsole By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, and free all wanderers from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death.